welcome to Maxxis. How good was that? Yeah, come on. That's what I'm talking about. I love wheeling that sort of stuff. Who else here loves wheeling that sort of stuff? You do? Come on, buddy. That's the way. All right, so I've got 2 questions for you. Who here would have thought, there's no way I'm ever driving my car over that? Excellent, yeah. Who here would have thought, there's no way on earth any car should drive over that? Exactly. I remember the first 4-drive I had. It was a 1982 Holden Jackaroo. Who here owned one of those? You're as mad as me, buddy. I tell you, that was an absolute piece of junk. It was the worst 4-wheel drive ever made, I reckon. But it did teach me how to 4-wheel drive. I remember the very first time I took it out, and I had to cross a river that was like from here to here wide. I got about halfway across, and I got stuck, and I frantically grabbed reverse, and I reversed back out, and I sat on the side and like looking at the creek going, I don't know how to get across this, don't know what to do. I sent it again, and I somehow or other managed to get across. I got to the other side, I was done. I sat there, my hands are shaking, my foot couldn't operate the clutch, and I just couldn't even drive the car. I was that wrecked, and the reason was I didn't have skills to do what was in front of me. Now, 30 years later, I've been 4-driving across the world, and I come to obstacles like this, and it's like, that's cool. Let me have a go at it. And all of that doesn't make me any more special than anybody else here. It just means I've got some skills, and that's what I want to give to you today. I want to give you some skills that are going to help you get out there on the tracks and wheel well. They're going to help you to get to the campsite at the end of the track without breaking your 4-wheel drive, without damaging the tracks. And you're going to be able to have a much more positive off-road experience. So, the first thing I want to talk to you about is a technique that I call follow the water. Now, I share this information and I wish you would believe me. Mount Maxxis, the geologists tell us, was formed millions of years ago. Nobody ever believes that bit. And then it's rained, and we've then had the perfect Instagrammer's watercourse form in the mountain. Now, an obstacle like this, when we see people off-road, I see people getting it wrong. And it's so I'm going to do 3 drives for you now. The first drive is the drive that somebody's going to do when they want to look after their car. They want to try and get this right. They're not trying to do anything fancy. They just want to get up the hill to go to camp. So I'm going to show you that drive. The next one is the Instagrammer's drive. And then the third one is the follow the water technique. Just a little bit about the vehicle. So I asked Opposite Lock to build this Navara for me so that it's relatable. It's not something wild and like you've never seen before, you know, portal axles, 35-inch twin locks, big suspension. It's none of that. It's got a set of Maxxis Razor tyres on it, it's got a little bit of suspension on it, and it's got a diff lock in the back from the factory and a bit of bar work to protect it. Inside the car, I've got a camera here so you can see me, I can talk to you. We've got down here at my feet another camera, which is so that you can see what I'm doing with the pedals. You'll notice that I use my left foot on the brake pedal a lot, and that left foot braking technique helps me control and stabilise the vehicle. And I really encourage people to learn this technique, even if you do drive a manual vehicle, because it will it just brings a level of control to the vehicle when you're off-roading. And the last camera is the one over my shoulder here, which allows you to see out the front of the car, sees the dash controls and what I'm doing in the vehicle. So let me show you the first drive that we see. So this is somebody that just want to get to camp. And they drive in like this, nice and slow, just being gentle, just trying to have a go. Oh, we're wheel spinning a bit, but you know, we're getting there, so keep on going. All right, that's good, we're getting up the hill. And then we get to about here, and it wheel spins. At this point, they usually just full boot it and try and wheel spin their way up the climb. So that's one drive. The second drive is the Instagrammer's drive. And that looks a bit more like this. It doesn't take any skill at all, and it beats on the 4-wheel drive. And it's basically right foot all the way to the floor. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm really glad opposite Locke owned this four-wheel drive, because I would not want to beat on my four-wheel drive like that. That's a good way that you're going to break components of your four-wheel drive, and yes, might look good on Instagram, but that's about it. So follow the water technique. Mrs. Mad Matt's kindly painted that blue line down there, so that's where the water would flow down the mountain. We're going to keep that under the centre of the vehicle as best we can. So I'm going to roll on up here, nice and controlled. Keep your eyes on what I'm doing on the brake pedal and the accelerator. At this point here, I'm going to go hard left. At this point here, I go hard right. And with very minimal wheel spin, I'm climbing Mount Maxxis in a nice, controlled manner. Does that deserve a round of applause? Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate the encouragement. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is rock steps. How do you climb rock steps or ledges that you come across when you're off-road? Here at Mad Matt Four Drive, I'm all about educating and building the four-wheel drive community so you guys can get out there and wheel well. So I'm going to be developing what I believe to be the world's first online four-wheel drive training course. And if you scan the QR code on the big screen or around the stadium, you'll be able to register your interest for some free and exclusive four-wheel drive training videos that I'm working on creating at the moment. Oh, a camera. There you go, buddy. That's a free one. Okay, let me get down the mountain. Now, in my warped brain, it makes sense to reverse down this. When you're off-road, always wear your seatbelt, because you never know when something's going to go wrong. So to come down a climb like this, I've got my mirrors adjusted so I can actually see the back tyres. And I can also see where I've come up the mountain. So I'm basically using follow the water technique as I go back down the hill. And then I'll line up for these rock steps over here. When we're off-road, there's two things that are working for us. The first is traction. So at any given moment in time, these Maxxis Razor tyres have a defined amount of traction for the terrain they're on. Now we can manipulate that traction a little bit. We can let some air out of the tyres. It increases the tyre footprint and allows the tyre to mould to the terrain. But we can't manipulate the traction once we're driving. We can only do it prior to the drive. So the second thing we have working for us is momentum. And if you think of momentum like this, the mass of that vehicle when it's moving has energy. And as a driver, we can draw down on that energy and use it to our advantage. But here's the problem that I see off-road. I see people using either not enough momentum, and therefore they're relying on the traction a lot more, or they're using too much momentum and they're breaking their four-wheel drive, or they're getting the bouncing tyres off the ground, and when your tyre's in the air, you don't have traction. There's this beautiful point in the middle of those two where the traction and the momentum come together and we get this sweet spot where the vehicle will traverse the terrain in a really nice manner. So I'm going to do two drives for you now. The first one's going to be the traction drive, where I just try and use just the traction of the tyres to get up the mountain. Sorry, up these rock steps. So this is nice and controlled. I'll be first gear low range. I come up to the rock steps, I stop, and then I just feed some power. Because the back wheels are pushing, we climb up those nice and easy. Then we come to where the front wheels and the back wheels have to climb together. Again, we stop, and then we feed the power on, and we wheel spin. Now, normally we'll see people, when that doesn't work, they just wheel spin some more to try and get up the rock steps. So this is where we combine the momentum in. So I'll back up a little bit. Now the way this drive is going to work is I'm going to keep the vehicle moving the whole way through. As I approach the rock steps, I'll just feed a little bit of power in. So it looks like this. Coming in, a little bit of power, front up, and keep going, and up we pop. And that's a nice controlled use of traction and momentum used together. That method's not going to beat on your four-wheel drive. The next technique I want to give to you is steering inputs. When you and I learned to drive, we were bitumen road, 2 white lines, beautifully engineered curves. And so we use this nice flowing steering input. When you're off-road, you want to change your steering inputs. And it looks more like you start steering late, and when you do turn, you turn a lot. I'll demonstrate what I mean down here. I'm going to turn hard right into this gully here. Okay, at this point the Navara starts screaming and saying this is too steep, so we've got to drive through that. We're actually in the rollover zone of the vehicle, so I've got to be able to control the vehicle really well. Now, this is where the left foot braking control comes in. This is where my steering inputs can be used to balance the vehicle as we drive up the obstacle. So right now, I'm straight ahead, and at this point I want to turn, and I've gone to full lock, looking for the traction, trying to minimise my wheel spin. Okay, I'm just looking for the traction. Okay, now my front right is getting to the edge of the climb, so I'll just back up the tiniest bit, and I'm looking for the traction. I reckon it's going to be over here to the left. Let's see. There it is. And we crawl on up. And all of that's nice and controlled, minimal wheel spin. When I was wheel spinning, I try to back it off and control the vehicle again. I'm just going to spin around down the back here, and I want to share a technique with you now which is really helpful for those of you who are driving the automatic four-wheel drives. So how many of you are driving a manual four-wheel drive? Show of hands. Yeah, there's a few of you. How many of you are driving automatics? Heaps more. And that's normal this day and age, and for me personally, I love driving an automatic off-road. It's my vehicle of choice, because I get the level of control that I was able to show coming up through here. Here's the thing, those of you driving a manual four-wheel drive are probably getting this correctly already. If you come to a descent like this, to go down that descent, you select first gear, low range, you let the clutch out, you start to drive down here, you're modulating your brakes so that the tyres continue to turn. When your tyres are turning, you've got traction. When you've got traction, you've got control. If you think about the ABS system in your vehicle, when the tyres skid, the ABS system lets go of the brakes so the tyres can rotate again and get you control. Exactly that principle applies off-road. What I see people doing in their automatic four-wheel drives is they leave the vehicle in drive. That means you have no engine braking at all. Bring the automatic vehicle over into first gear, low range, into manual mode, and select the low gears. So I'm going to demonstrate that for you in this descent. In the Navara, so that I can get first low, I come back to drive, then I flick it across one, have a look on the dash, it says first gear, that's perfect. And then we come to the top of gunshot here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to the best of my ability, modulate my braking as we go down the hill so that the tyres continue to turn. But I'm also using that engine braking. And this should give me a nice controlled descent down gunshot. And there you go, nice and controlled. A little bit of wheel slip, that's going to happen, but we get down the climb in a really controlled manner. And that's what we're looking for from a competent four-wheel driver, is the vehicle is always under control. I'll just spin back around over here. I want to unpack the diff lock function for you, because I'm surprised, well, a lot of people don't understand what a diff lock does, and this is a really good opportunity to demonstrate that to you. So, in our four-wheel drives, we call them a four-wheel drive because they have the potential to drive all four wheels. but they're only in a standard trim, only ever actually driving 2 wheels, one front and one back. The power goes to the wheel of least resistance. I'll show you that right now. So as I drive up here, we'll flex out and we'll have one front wheel and one back wheel spinning, okay? And we don't go up the climb, okay? And it just keeps spinning. And that's because the power's gone to those wheels that don't have traction. Now, if I flick on the diff lock, what I've done is I've connected the 2 back wheels together. And now I've actually got 3 wheels that are driving, and this is the power of the diff lock. Watch this. That rear left wheel has now got all the traction, and I'll be able to crawl through this. All going well, there you go. Okay, and that's because that left rear wheel has traction and can push the vehicle up the climb. That's the power of the diff lock. So let's run through what we've learned so far. We've learned about follow the water. We've learned about climbing a rock step. We've learned about using our steering inputs to get through an obstacle and how we can use that off-road. We've learned about using the automatic vehicles in manual mode to go down a decline, and we've learned about our diff lock. Now what I'm going to do for you is give you a drive that I would expect to see from a competent 4-wheel driver when they're off-road. It's nice and controlled, minimal wheel spin, and they get to the top of Mount Maxxis. And it would look something like this. How cool is that? Does that deserve a round of applause? I hope that's given you a bit of an idea of how capable a relatively standard 4-wheel drive can be. Make sure you scan those QR codes on your way out the door, and I'll be down here if you want to come and ask me any more questions about that you've seen from the presentation, or want to grab a Mad sticker, or yeah, I'm Mad Matt. Stay safe on the trails.